Oh, here I go again, and I'm going to get my co-panelists here are going to come after me, Vinny. Yes, you hit the point that as a prosecutor I'm worried about. There is no evidence prior to this of him looking those things up. And while he's proven beyond a reasonable doubt and admitted that he discarded the body, I've said this a million times, murder cases like this and a prom are very similar as a defense lawyer. You dance with the one you brought. And this is the case you have. And the prosecution does not have a body. It doesn't have the forensics. I'm not saying they're going to lose the case, but what I am saying, I said this to you before, medical event or potentially she committed suicide. I have literally handled cases where people have lied because they did not want to say to a family that my wife committed suicide or something of that nature. People lie for all sorts of reasons, and that is exactly what's unfolded. Vinny, I'm looking for vindication here. Doctor, I have handled cases where people have lied because they were afraid. They're in the middle of a divorce. They lied about where they were. They lied about what they were doing, making them very suspicious because they said, I know you guys think I'm the one who did it. And it turned out that they didn't, in fact, do it. So we can come up with all sorts of psychological, you better than anybody should know psychologically, people will lie to cover up things that doesn't necessarily mean they did it. I've been there. I've been on the scene, just like Rick has. And Rick will attest to this. I have seen people jump to conclusions, and he just alluded to it a minute ago. And the minute they do, I've watched it happen. Every piece of evidence that supports the theory of the case they accept, and anything that doesn't support the theory they reject. I just had a murder case dismissed, a homicide case dismissed, on a baby. After 4 years, medical experts, oh, look at the injuries. They could have only been done in that 15-minute period. Wait a minute. How could they have not been done 3 hours ago? They weren't able to answer it. But in the end, the defense found an expert that gave an alternate cause of death. And 4 years later, a man who's accused of killing his 5-week-old baby, who everyone had locked, signed, sealed, and delivered as guilty, had the case dismissed against him. Now, I'm not saying that happened here, but I agree with Rick. There are lots of mistakes that happen, and the defense is pointing it out here. So I'm a prosecutor at heart. I'm just telling you how, as a prosecutor, I would be worried how a jury is going to see this case. And I hope these experts didn't do what they did in the case that I had, because they made an egregious error on the cause of death.
And Bob, one thing we're hearing here from the mom was that she had these text messages, and it didn't seem like, at least she's saying, the detectives were not that interested in what she had to share with them. That struck me like, come on, guys, come on. Like, you want all the information.
Vinny, this is an epidemic problem in law enforcement. When I was an assistant you know my history. I was in the homicide squad. We were curious. We cared. When I became the head prosecutor, it got to a point where I said, if anybody says the word suicide in the first 5 minutes of an unattended death, or a death in which there could be other explanations, you will lose your job. They literally would refer to it as the S word, because so many cases were being written off immediately as suicides and medical events because they didn't have the desire to investigate any further. And it sounds just like, and here's the other thing, the pathologists and the medical examiners a lot of times go along. There's this game that's played with the investigators and with the pathologists. How do you know it's a suicide as opposed to an accident, for example? She fell over that thing. How do you know it wasn't nefarious? Why aren't the detectives looking at these text messages, interviewing? This investigation would take me weeks, maybe even months before I would even approximate coming close to the idea that something like this was a suicide. But you know what? This goes on, Vinny, all the time. I know the public thinks that a lot of times prosecutors are like falsely charging people. They don't realize the epidemic of where they're just trying to close the case. Maybe Rick can confirm this. Close the case and move on. That's what I think is happening here.
Yeah, I would also ask them to voluntarily give me your cell phones. Because you know, if it's 15 young adults and something happens, they're going to text each other about it. There'll be some level of communication.
Absolutely.
And I'd like to know what's going on at around 1 o'clock in the morning. Nobody saw her missing. No one noticed that she was gone. I don't know. Like, why aren't they speaking? Did any of them speak to the mom? Any of the people who were in the apartment?
Right. There's a lot.
I don't know. Was she just gone and none of the 15 people noticed that she was gone and nobody called anyone?
And there's a social history. The mother knows The mother knows this child. Nobody, this is like important to me. And you know what? Jumping off a building for 17 stories, doctor can tell me better than anyone, is not a typical way, I hate to use gender here, that a woman,
No.
I'm not saying all, it's just not normal that all of a sudden you decide to jump off a 17-story building. It's odd to me.